So, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. My name is John Lunn, aka Johnny Chips, and in this video series, we talk all things cloud with experts and advocates from right across our industry, covering a wide variety of topics, from skills and careers through to technical overviews and soft skills. So, whether you're watching this on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, or LinkedIn, thanks so much for tuning in. Please do take part in the chat, drop us a comment, a like, and a subscribe. That would be absolutely awesome. Okay, so my next guest is a Microsoft Azure developer. He's a public speaker and a huge advocate of the tech community. Based up in the fantastic city of Edinburgh, Scotland, I'm super thrilled to welcome my next guest on In Conversation With as Mr. Keith Atherton. And hello, Keith. How you doing?
Doing good, thanks, John. Good to see you again after a few weeks away.
Absolutely. No, it's always great to have you back on these shows, Keith, and say hello and have a bit of a catch up. But yeah, it was only a few weeks ago we caught up and did some stuff around Unity. So, look, thanks for coming back on and doing one of these in convo with. I was surprised that we hadn't done one up until this point, to be honest, Keith.
Yeah, it's funny, the time's just flown by. I think we talked about it a few months ago and trying to find some availability. You know how it is. Life gets busy. We do so many different things. I think we both lost track, but I'm glad we can make it work. So it's good to be here.
No, absolutely. My pleasure. All my pleasure. So, I mean, look, Keith, we got a great few topic areas to meander around and chew the fat on, so to speak. But before we get into it, do you want to give yourself a bit more of a broader introduction and let people know who you are?
Yeah, and thank you for your introduction. That was very kind as ever. But yeah, my name's Keith Atherton. I've been a developer for over 22 years now, quite a long time. I'm currently based in Edinburgh, as John mentioned, but you know, as you can probably tell from this funny accent, I'm not from there originally. I'm originally from Nottingham in East Midlands, but I've moved about, throughout the UK, lived in the US for a few years, moved around a few different places. But for many reasons, I'm based in Edinburgh now, and I work for a consultancy there as a senior developer, consultancy called Quorum as well. So I've been there since the start of this year. Some great people, some interesting work. So I'm really loving that at the moment.
No, thanks, Keith. And look, let's kick things off. The first thing we thought we'd talk around is career. You know, it's a really great kind of conversational point around, you know, helping others identify, you know, how do you get into the tech industry, and, you know, how do you know, what decisions do you make to kind of lead you to a certain point of where you might want to be. So you're an Azure developer at the moment, Keith. Like you say, you're working for Quorum right now. Talk us through that, you know, because as I understand it, you've got a non-traditional, whatever a traditional way into tech is, but you've got a non-traditional route into tech. I mean, how did you get to the position that you're in at the moment, Keith, with Quorum?
Yeah, it's quite a varied story, I suppose. As you say, many traditional approaches might be getting a computer science degree, you know, or something IT or programming related. With me, it was a little different. When I went through school, college, and then university, I actually ended up taking a physics degree, believe it or not. That was something I just had an interest in at the time, but I didn't know what I wanted to do as a career. I just knew that I enjoyed different technical subjects. I like troubleshooting and problem solving. And it was really just kind of, you know, something that I thought, well, I'll take that and then I'll see where it goes from there. And when I did the degree, I was lucky enough to get a pretty good grade. I was offered offered to go forward for a PhD and potential other further education there. But I knew at that stage that going forward in physics, it probably wasn't for me. But what I did enjoy was actually on the degree, there was an AI module where we had to write we had to do some coding for it, basically. There was some C++ and there was some various other things. And I found that I liked the problem solving nature of it, being able to create something with the code, being hands-on with the programming and actually build systems. You know, as soon as you code it, you see it working straight away. I like the immediacy of things like that as well. So just based on that, I gave that some more thought, did some research, asked around a few people, and then actually applied straight from uni to get a programming job. It was actually a graduate programmer job down in, it was a London-based consultancy, but I was based in Surrey, just outside London. So yeah, graduate programmer there, few promotions within that company and just learnt the ropes, learnt the lingo, and just kind of developed the skills from there. That was my starting point.
Yeah, and I always find it really interesting because I think the worlds of developers and IT professionals are very much blurred now when we talk about cloud computing. I mean, what's your take on being an Azure developer? What does that mean to you, Keith? And, how do you explain what you do for a living to people that maybe aren't technical or don't really, aren't in the space?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess with this role that I've got now, and something I've done for many years is quite a consultant type role. So if you're working with customers directly, they might want something supported. They might want a new solution designed and even developed in some cases as well. It may be extending a system they currently have. So it's quite varied, which I like. I do like the variety. I find that quite interesting. But in terms of the actual hands-on, as you say, Azure development, that's a big part of what I do. I'm also starting to do some with the Power Platform as well. It's really just being aware of what is possible, what features are available with this suite of products, what services you've got available, how they can fit to solve a customer's problem. So I guess when I explain it to others, it's really, every day can be different. It depends on the needs of the customer. Can we help them? Can we design a solution or change what they've currently got or modernize what they currently have? And it's mostly just to make their life easier or save them time or save them money, something that has a tangible benefit. So I guess that's a big part of the appeal for me as well is, there's an actual business need. There's something useful that comes out of it rather than just tech for tech's sake.
I mean, it's a really interesting point that you make there is that you're taking customers' actual problems or issues or things that they want to solve, and you're translating those into some kind of a technical statement of works to build a solution. I'm right in thinking those we briefly mentioned this off camera, Keith, but those interpersonal skills are, quite heavily involved with your role, it sounds, as well. I mean, what's your take on that in the industry at the moment, Keith? Because from my perspective, I've never really seen any of those official, kind of training courses or how do we speak to people, how do we speak to customers. They've I don't know, they've kind of almost been left to the individual, to kind of develop for themselves. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I agree. There's not many places I've seen where they would give that kind of training, or maybe infer, well, it's down to the individuals, you know, um, it's up to them to take care of this themselves, or they just naturally a people person and we'll try and bring this out, or
Mm.
can we try and change them and improve this? I was at one company where they did actually have like a course, just an internal course for someone who was particularly good with the sales and the pre-sales, just saying, well, look, here's how to approach a customer for the first time. Here's how to, kind of have a bit of an interest just outside of the work and try and get a connection with them and just try and build a rapport with a customer. You may be working with them for months or even longer. It's trying to get that good first impression. Things like this just really to, to kind of make things run more smoothly. And I think you do it very well, John. I think you've always been great on these shows, the different channels, the interviews you do. And, I don't know if that's a natural thing, but it comes across very natural, very genuine. You seem very authentic. And I think that that's something that, it pays dividends. If you can do that, you can connect to others, people in your team, your manager, or potential clients who it could be internal or external. It really, really goes a long way. And it's something I've always tried to do throughout the career. I've worked for a few consultancies. So again, if that customer may be paying big money or want some of your time, or it's giving that good impression and show that you're genuinely there to help them. That's why we're there, to try and see if we can help in any way, or if it's not strictly on that statement of work, but you need some advice with this, or this. Hey, if we've got the skills, we're happy to help. So I think I've mostly kept those kind of roles in my career so far, and it's something I've always enjoyed doing. I've gravitated towards it, so it's probably just naturally worked out over the years. I've not been stuck in a basement writing code in the dark. Not that I'd say many do, that the stereotype, but I've liked it. I've always wanted that customer facing element. And it's something I've always enjoyed.
Yeah, no, and firstly, thanks, Keith. I mean, I think I've been very similar to you, where I've worked in customer-facing roles for long enough that sometimes it's not about bamboozling anybody with the science or the technical acumen and things like that. You've got to speak to people on the level that they're at, and understand and kind of portray that. But I don't know about you, but I find that people. I don't know whether it's because I'm immersed in community, like the same as you, Keith. We're seeing a lot of this on a daily basis, but I always try and reflect on what my life used to be like when I first started out in tech, and it was very much about the tech. It was very much about learning new skills consistently, constantly, and applying them. It was never about speaking to people, to understand what the problems are that you're trying to solve with this technology, and that kind of evolved over time. And so, like you, I think it's almost an essential place. I'd probably put it in now. If you are in technology, I'm not saying that you've all got to be people person, people, whatever the term is, but just that ability to kind of break things down and discuss things into that complicated technical arena, but break them down into simplistic terms is always a great skill to have. I found, and I think people respond to you well, when you're not there just rattling off the latest and greatest technical, version this, version that, and I always find it really remarkable now, especially with cloud, that developers, all of a sudden now you've got this kind of whole kit bag of stuff that you can do with an Azure cloud platform. That, look, we're being honest with ourselves now. Nobody knows everything, but how do you know enough to have that report? It's a bit of a balancing act, isn't it? With, look, you're speaking to a customer, gaining requirements and understand the problem. How do you feed that? So, I mean, I don't know whether you've got any great hints or tips on that, Keith, or whether it revolves around learning that technology and how we learn it, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. There's a couple of good points there, as you say, the interpersonal skills. The way some people call them soft skills, some people don't like that term, whichever it is. But I find the same, if you need to skip levels and talk to some senior management or board level people who are not technical, or a customer who just, I've worked with customers before who they're a charity. It's two people in a bedroom in the house. You knock something together in Access or made something very basic. They don't know technical things to a deep level, but you need to connect and say how you can help them or what they can afford licensing wise with their budget or what they can do. And being able to jump to those different levels with people, as you say, it's not something it's just something I've naturally gravitated to. I like working with people, dealing with people. So it's just kind of developed as I've gone rather than I've taken formal courses. And if someone was to think from a selfish point of view as well, if you started your own consultancy and you wanted to interface with customers directly, well, that's maybe something to consider. Or you want to get on well with people in your team or deal with your line manager when you talk about performance reviews. And you want to be able to communicate in a good language and easy to understand. And as you say, not full of jargon and acronyms and initials, to actually be understood and get your point across, get your voice heard. So, I think there's those side benefits if you even considered it from that point of view of, there are benefits from getting on with people, because it's people who run the company, people who pay the consultancy for work, for example. So it's a win-win if you develop those skills. The other thing you mentioned there as well, I think, is a really good point. And with Azure, I do see it the same. I see it as this big toy box, really, and the same with AWS, GCP, and many others. You've just got all these cool things you can play with. So for me, I've got a personal interest in AI and machine learning. Again, going back to my sort of physics and days of those kind of highly technical science-based things with lots of mathematics involved as well. I also do like that. Okay, you've got all the data platform side, you've got all the services for your managed services side, all the VMs and different security infrastructure. So I just figure when you've got the cloud, and there are many benefits with the cloud, no matter which platform you go with. Just so happens I'm mostly a Microsoft guy, so it's mostly Azure for me at the moment, for the most part. Is just, wow, you can do these cool new things. You can holistically look at a whole solution just using Azure. I don't need. You can use on-prem, you can do hybrid, but it's like I can use all these to create a whole new system. So it's almost like, wow, you've got all these fun things you can play with. So yeah, it's something that I've enjoyed. I've worked towards the last, for the best part of a year. I've wanted to get more involved with Azure and more cloud-based projects. I just feel that's one of the big ways that technology is going in the future. Is the way things are going. There's so many benefits, whether it's cost benefits or having the latest patches there, the latest versions of things and so on. So the main approach I've been taking, which is almost exactly a year now, is starting taking some Microsoft certifications I know there's several ways to learn. Again, I don't come from a conventional IT background, but with this, I learned a few things by myself with Azure, but I did realize quickly I was cherry picking. I needed to learn about VMs. I needed to learn about hosting SQL Server, and realized there were several different flavors you could have within Azure. You could have a managed instance or different PaaS versions of it and so on. I thought, hang on, if I'm cherry picking, I might have gaps in the knowledge. So one thing I thought, well, if I take some Azure certifications, and I've seen many people take them, such as yourself and Gregor Suttie, many other people who do lots of great community work. And it's through this, sharing this within the community, made me aware of it. For many years I was aware of certifications, but I didn't know what was involved. It sounded like a big scary exam, potentially expensive. I just didn't know. I just didn't learn. I just didn't look through it. But the more involved with the community I got, exposed me to some of these things, and I thought, okay. Took a couple of the exams to get started. I'm 5 in now. I'm studying for my 6th one. I'm just looking to build on it. So one of the main things with this is that I get the broad understanding of the topic. These certifications, you have to cover enough. You need to understand your stuff well enough to pass the exam in it. So that's already a good benchmark. Doesn't hurt on the CV as well. But the main thing for me was learning these skills so I can then play with them for side projects and, potentially work towards a job using them, which, I've now, been lucky enough to attain as well in recent months.
It's such an interesting area actually when you bring up certifications, Keith. Because I think you came on to the Welsh Azure Users Group. You gave a great talk around getting started with certifications, what they're all about, and it's great because, like you say, giving that information back to the community, it helps others understand, because there are going to be thousands upon thousands of people that don't know which way to turn. So, kind of doing those kind of talks, there's two angles there. There's the community side of things, and then there's the certification side of things. So let me pick you up on the certification side first, Keith, and just to get your view on things. But I've come across both positive and negative experiences with certifications. People like Microsoft, as well as lots of other vendors, they tend to change these programs up every few years, and some people can see them as a little bit of a money-making scheme from a vendor to reintroduce and make gamification. We get these badges and all of that, which is great. I mean, like you, I use certifications to fill in the gaps of my knowledge and kind of point me at the areas that maybe I haven't dealt with in any detail whatsoever, and try and push myself into those areas so I can make sense of it. What's your take on it, Keith? Do you sit on which side of the fence do you just sit on? Is it the positive side that they're there for good? Is it a money-making scheme? What do you make of the whole cert program at the moment?
Yeah, that's interesting because, like yourself, I've actually come across both sides. I've been working at some places where, like Quorum, where I work now, where they're actually a Microsoft Gold partner. They need people with certifications to meet certain competencies. As many of these different partners do, and they bring benefits to the organization as well as potential new sales, potential new customers. Hey, we're expertise in this field, so we can help you with this. We've got fully qualified certified people in this area, so there's confidence for the customer as well. As you say, I've also worked at some companies who don't have that vested interest in the certifications, and even a couple of them have actually turned their noses up a bit at the certifications as, oh, well, this is kind of just a showing off thing. You don't really need it. You can just Google it or look up or get a book, and you can just learn what you need. Again, that cherry picking approach, which as and when you need it, that can make sense as well. You don't need to learn this whole data platform. You just need the SQL Server part. So this, I can understand the targeting nature of it. There was also one company I did work for where they says, oh, we do encourage training. We have a small budget. We can give you some time to learn things, but not certifications. Their justification was they saw it as, oh, no, we just see that as a thing only for your CV so you can hop and leave the company. This was several years ago. This was several companies back. But if it's, learning, or you want books getting in, or you want a Udemy course or a Pluralsight subscription, we're happy to help, but we don't want to formalize these qualifications for your CV. Again, maybe that was an old-fashioned attitude. Again, it was many years ago. I'm certainly more on the positive side. Again, I think there are so many benefits. Let's say selfishly, it can be good for your CV. For me, it's mostly about getting that thorough understanding of all the skills. So I do development consultancy. I'm looking to do more architecture as well. So when I've got a high level knowledge of what tools I can play with, what toys are in the box, I know what is possible for a customer solution. But if I only know, say, a small percentage of the tools available, if I only have the hammer, every solution will look like a nail. I'll just wedge and crowbar this in to make this solution work because it's all I know. But if I'm certified and I keep modernizing those skills, as you say, some of these programs change often, and many of the services change every few months. It seems sometimes every 3 or 6 months. A Microsoft certification may, hey, we've updated this again because a new service has been added, one's been deprecated, and these two have been merged. So it can pay to keep them up to date, keep them renewed, which is now a free process for Microsoft at least as well. You get the year expiry for the role-based certifications with a free online at home renewal. So that process has changed. It doesn't feel like the same potential money-making thing of every 2 years, pay the full price, do it again. So I certainly think it's improved, and I certainly see it as a force for good, personally.
Yeah, I'm with you, Keith, because I mean I've even come across conversations where people, that take certs on a regular basis and end up with, 10s, 20s, 30s, into that realm of cert. I've even seen those kinds of people being touted as gatekeepers in the industry. Like, look, you're showing off all these badges, and you think, okay, I get that. I see how that can be daunting or intimidating maybe to somebody else, but I think you roll it back and you keep that positive intent in mind. Like you, Keith, you start off on one of the fundamental skills. You're up to what, cert number 5 or 6 now that you're studying for. It doesn't, you keep that way of working, and I think it's just a method that I used myself over years. You keep that method up, that you just task yourself with, I'm going to aim to study for one cert every 6 months, or whatever it is that suits your own cadence. Before you know it, you've kind of amassed this big lump of education. Now, I think the reality there, and the thing that I always struggle to get my head around, is that there's no way on earth that any one person is going to use all of the skills that are required in all of those certifications for any one project. So you can guarantee that if you've studied for a cert that you've kind of just kept up to date, you're probably not going to be on top of your game in that area if you're not using it on a daily basis. And I think that's the elephant in the room that people, I don't know, you don't seem to hear too much. That it's like anything, isn't it? You've got to flex those muscles. You've got to keep them in check to and keep practicing. So having the cert doesn't make you the expert, in my opinion. Having the cert just shows that you're on that trajectory to learn those skills, and that's where you want to be with your career. I mean, I don't know if you see it any differently, Keith, but yeah, I see them as a force for good, and try and ignore the negative comments about certifications personally.
Absolutely. I think there's two good points you made there. One is the frame of mind. If you go in like anything with that positive frame of mind, whether it's taking an exam or you're continuously learning, as you say, your cadence may be one every 6 months, one every 3 months, whatever the case is. We've all got lives. Many of us are very busy, and we likely got other priorities. We've got dependents, health concerns, whatever it may be. It may need, it may be something that's tough to find time for. And that's totally fine. I know some people who, as you say, get into the 20s, 30s, and I think, wow, are they constantly renewing every weekend? They must be so busy. And here's me with a handful, which I'm gradually adding to. But again, the key word there is gradual. I'm not bombarding and say, right, I'm going to do 10 this month, or whatever is even humanly possible. It's just, well, I'm happy with this level. Also, I have a very specific path for me of, I'm doing lots with Azure and Power Platform specifically. So they're my main 2 fields. I'm not going to catch them all. It's not like Pokemon. I'm not going to get them all because there's tons of them. I'll just get the ones that are meaningful to me. And on to your second point there, just as you say, to stay on your game, to stay sharp, is actually using the thing. It's a bit like maybe learning another language at school. If you're not using it, it fades. If you don't use it regularly, it's that knowledge might be replaced with something else. And it's the same for me. I think the proportion that the small percentage of the things that I use on a daily or weekly basis, they're the things that are sharp. And that can go the other way. If you take a certification, you take an exam on something you use often, you're probably going to have a much better chance at it because it's fresh in your mind. You use it, the quirks, the tips and the tricks. But it's the same, I think, going in with that positive frame of mind and saying, okay, here are the tools in the toolbox. I don't remember how to provision all these services and all the nuances fresh in my mind because I've not used this one for 6 months or 3 months, or I've never used this one. I've only studied this one. But sometimes just being aware of those tools, saying, oh, no, I did learn this thing about VNets the other day, or I did learn this thing about MySQL the other day. You can do this. Now's the time I'll actually focus my time, research to get fresh back into it. But at least I was aware of that skill. So then I know it can be part of a solution. So I think that kind of high level overview of knowing what's in the toolbox, what can I use?
100% agree with you, Keith. Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about having that breadth of knowledge, as well as the specialism. The breadth of knowledge, I think, is, I don't know, for me, it feels that it's almost, again, not necessarily a necessity, but it doesn't do you any harm if you know the capabilities that you're dealing with. You can make the decision of, well, I'm never going to use that. Or I'll never have interest in that, and I'm going to deliberately stay away from that area. But like you say, at least if you know and you're aware of the capabilities, you can make that informed decision, I guess. So, I mean, look, we touched on, keeping up to date with your skills and keeping on top of things, and we touched on the fact that you've done a number of public speaking gigs over the last couple of years. You've appeared on the Welsh Azure user group. We've done stuff in the past before now. Community, Keith, I know that you're a big advocate of community. You're a big part of our tech community as we have it, not just in the UK, but because of the way COVID has kind of pushed us all now, we're kind of it's great. It's like a global Azure tech community, I think, that we've got going on at the moment, and it's a great place to be. I mean, what's your take on community, and why do you give back, Keith? What's in it for you, I guess, is the question there.
Yeah, good question. I think there's a few reasons. I think going back to the, naturally being a people person or liking dealing with people is a big part of it for me. It's something that I like to share the knowledge. I like to help people. I like to see people develop. So it's something that I just naturally enjoy. So, things like this or giving the talks to user groups, as you say, it's a global thing now. I given some to, the Iceland Azure user group, many in the UK, Limerick, the .NET, Limerick Azure.NET user group as well a couple of weeks ago, which I really loved as well. Same with Kazim in Africa as well. I know there's people who do many more than me as well, more, they travel more than I do as well to many of these to give talks and sessions. But for me, it's just meeting people, learning from them, sharing what I know. I think the big way I got started as well was the very first talk I did was a pre-recorded video for Festive Tech Calendar last December. And actually that's coming up again this year, which I'm co-organizing with Gregor and Richard. So yeah, we're still open for sessions. Call for speakers is open. So, if anyone's got any, please submit them. But that was my first start. And the reason I did that, it was about one of those talks around there was Microsoft certifications, was that I'd taken my first one and I'd learned a lot from the first one. I learned a lot of things, to kind of close the circle back to the certifications was, I wish I'd known these things before I took my first one of the exam's actually not that scary. Here's the cost. Here's what the UI looks like when you take the exam. Simple things. But at the time I was like, this is a bit of a big unknown. But then there was people like Gregor and many others who were sharing, kind of study guides on their blogs and, explaining a little bit about the exam and what to expect, how long they take, even basics like this. And then the more I learned, I thought, that's really interesting. I'd love to take one of those just to try it. I don't know if I'll pass, but just give it a go. And it was really, again, I wish I'd known that when I took my first one. And sometimes it can be getting a discount on the exam or even a free exam voucher, or, hey, there's a free online video course here, here, and here. So I thought, if I can give people that start, if it's something they're interested in, that might give them that boost, give them that kind of head start, or save them some money, or save them some time. So it was really just to kind of do that. And I've just kept doing that. Every time I've learned something that I think will be useful for others, or like, I wish I'd known that first off, that's what drives me to give these talks. It's just to help other people.
And it's spot on, Keith, to be honest. I think, sometimes when you say things like, other people are doing more, I disagree. From my perspective, what you're doing is phenomenal. It's a fantastic place to be, and it's really appreciated by all, because I think people fail. I sometimes forget that you can have 20 years in the industry. You know, you can be a seasoned veteran, work 9 to 5 for 20 years, but you don't know everything. You simply do not know everything. So, as basic or as simple as one person might think a talk is or a speech is, to somebody, that is the most vital bit of information they're going to have. And I think that's what dawned on me, that it doesn't matter what you're saying. It doesn't need to be, super in-depth technical, bug fixing on a daily basis, competing with the teams of developers that Microsoft might have, and you're there going, oh, I found this, amazing bug that I've just fixed. It's not about that. Like you say, it's about that accessibility. It's about helping others take the step from wherever they currently are to the next step forward for wherever they want to go. And I think what you do, and I love the way that you give your talks, Keith, because they are so well broken down that literally anybody can understand what you're talking about. And I think that's an absolute brilliant sign for a talk, is that you don't have to have assumed knowledge. And I know sometimes it's difficult what level to pitch these things at, but I think, I cast your mind back to the video that you talked about there, the one that you did for the festive tech calendar. I remember watching that, and I'd done a bit with the bots, with the Azure bot services before now, not a massive amount, but I thought, I'm going to watch Keith's video now. And literally I watch it and it's like, wow, it's just straightforward, So I think that's a really great thing. And people like you, Keith, when you're putting that back into the community, the more people that you're helping, it just pays off dividends, I guess. And, so thank you for that, because I think, people, I don't know what it is. People might think that people that give back to community are in it for something, and it's not. It's just that feeling of gratitude that, like you, I've built my career on learning from other people over the years, from reading blog articles, from watching videos. And what inspired me to start doing this was, one, COVID hit and I had a bit more time on my hands, first and foremost. But then, there's bound to be some information in my head somewhere that other people are going to find useful. So try and give that back, isn't it, I guess? And I think it's just that whole camaraderie aspect. Then you end up building a network of genuine friends and people that you can bounce off and help with your own education on a particular subject area. Because what I found now, Keith, is that, if there's something new has changed on a service in Azure, we might get the Azure news or the update released, and then somebody might talk about that. And then all of a sudden you're just engrossed in a genuine conversation about, how does that help, or why have they changed that? And it's not like you're learning, you don't feel like you're just having a conversation with somebody about it. But then all of a sudden, oh yeah, I've just learned something, without even realizing. So It's a great place to be, I guess, is probably the point to say, Keith.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate the feedback. I mean, I've always enjoyed the talks, like yourself. It always made me welcome at the user groups. And I was lucky enough to volunteer for Data Scotland, actually, up in Glasgow last week, which was a great event. And again, some really good speakers and some great talks. And I think Data Scotland, like some other events, do have programs. If you're new to speaking, they might assign you a mentor. You can apply for the program, help you get started if it's something you're interested in. And like yourself, John, I always think giving back is great, because it's just, like I say, a big community. As you say, we discussed before your updates on Azure, the new services, the things that have changed, really useful. We've talked before about Unity. I've had some experience doing some game development before with Unity for a few years, and it's kind of, if you enjoy learning, it doesn't feel like work. It's not like, oh, well, I'm going to school today and putting a shift in. It's just like, oh no, I'm interested. What can it do? Well, that's cool. How does that work? And we start, bouncing ideas of, what if we combine this with this? What could it do then? What if we trained an ML model to do this? Could we extend it? Could we play with it like a toy? Could we do something cool with it? And that's something I've always enjoyed, and it's just kept it natural. So I've just, again, like dealing with people in my career, it's just, I've naturally gravitated towards it because I enjoy it. It's not like, oh, well, I better clock in and give a talk today. It's like, great, let's do. And sometimes the feedback at the end of the talk of, oh, have you ever considered using this? Or, have you ever done that with it before? That's made me then learn or research more. So it's actually, I've often learned more by the end of the talk, which is, everyone wins. It's great.
No, absolutely, Keith, and keep it up, because it's it's always great to see to see the stuff that you're doing in the community. Anyway, it's like I say, I was just shocked that we hadn't sat down and done one of these in convo with videos. It's like, for the amount of time I've been doing them, but Keith, it's been super fantastic having you on the show, and you're discussing these areas. Hopefully, people are watching this and picking up some great information. I'm sure they are. But I always like to throw out this one last question to my guests as they come on, and it's really about, we talked around the speed of change in the industry and how much we need to stay on top of things with certification and our learning pathways and things like that. But what do you think it is, Keith? What's your next big bet in tech? Over the next 5 to 10 years, where do you think we're headed as an industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. I certainly think the popularity of cloud over recent years, that will just continue to grow. Again, there's so many benefits just moving things off-prem, or at least doing a hybrid. There's so many flashy new tools that they're patched and kept up to date and give you, tools in the toolbox that you may not have on-prem, if you're working with AI and ML and things like this. So I think that will grow and grow. Of course, it makes the providers like Microsoft and Amazon, a bit of money as well. So everyone's winning. There's a lot of benefits, both sides of the fence with that. Related to that as well, I think particularly the way AI and ML are going, I think things are really going leaps and bounds with those. We saw things in the news recently with Google's Lambda AI. An engineer at Google actually tested it with conversations. They were talking about some heavy things about life and death, and actually, he believed it became sentient. It's how convincing some things are happening. It's really escalating since the days I was sitting at home playing with an Atari 2500. It's really it's really jumped forward. And even the recent news, with the Meta's Blender bot and other things, I really think there's so many things you can do with ML and AI that will just continue to grow and maybe automate some routine jobs, routine tasks. New jobs will grow from this. But I really think, if you can automate things and save time, save money, and let people spend their time on the skill sets they've got, instead of doing the routine, mundane work, we're going to bring out the best in people potentially with that as well. You're going to have more time for the interesting work you want to do. So I really think, AI and ML, it's just growing leaps and bounds, and I think it will continue to as well.
Yeah, I agree, Keith. I think the amount of movement forward with AI, like you say, I mean, this has become the slot where I should say the answer's AI, because everybody answers AI in this part, because it seems to be everywhere, doesn't it? I think every facet, and or if it's not everywhere, it's how can we fit AI into this to make it more, efficient. But yeah, it's a really interesting, exciting place to be. So yeah, I guess that's the hint to go and start studying up if you're watching this on some of the AI components, the capabilities of Azure, isn't it, Keith?
Absolutely.
But, look, Keith, this has been a super fun chat. Thanks, as always, for being an awesome guest and coming on and saying hello to me again. Are there any last parting words of wisdom you want to drop on us before we call it a day?
Well, no, it's just to say my pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm glad we did this. It's always great fun spending time with you, John, and thanks for all you do. All the community work, having channels like this, sharing the knowledge, keeping people up to date with Azure and other cloud platforms as well. It's just great. It's just an enjoyable thing, and keep up the good work, buddy.
Well, thank you, Keith. But no, first and foremost, thank you for being an awesome guest, and no doubt we will be doing something together again fairly soon. I'm pretty sure of that, Keith.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. Count me in.
Right. See you soon. Thanks a lot, Keith.
Nice one. Thanks, John.
Ta-da. Bye.